point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 642nd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Nancy Wolf, who is not here. So it's just George Harvey. This is a news aggregation show dealing with energy and climate change news from the 18th of September until the 24th of September, today being the 25th. I'm recording in Brattleboro, Vermont, and the news that this is from is first aggregated onto a blog called geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, and you can read the articles that I mentioned there, although in this show I do about 3 articles a day, and at that site there's usually about 15. You can click on a calendar and find the article that I'm talking about there. Also, for many viewers, there's a place on the screen where you will find a link to a site called tinyurl/ and then one word, Energy Week 642. All that said, I'm just going to go right ahead into the show. The first item is from Renews, and we have a picture of a New London pier, which is in New London, Connecticut, I guess. The title of the article is States Request Injunction to Resume Revolution Work. The states of Connecticut and Rhode Island asked a federal judge for a preliminary injunction allowing work to resume on Ørsted's 704 megawatt Revolution wind farm. The Trump administration's August stop work order, quote, threatens to imminently and irreparably harm Rhode Island and Connecticut, end quote, they wrote. Now, what has happened here is that the Trump administration, after Ørsted had put hundreds of millions, way over $1 billion into building this wind farm, and it was 80% finished, they issued a stop work order on the basis of unexplained, as I understand it, security issues. The Ørsted, the developer, and Ørsted is Ørsted is an interesting company. It years ago was called Danish Oil. Then it became Danish Oil and Natural Gas. Then they used the initials DONG, so it was called Dong. And then it became Ørsted. Originally it was oil and natural gas, and now none of the fossil fuels remain in the company's inventory of assets. And they're basically not 100% of what they're doing, because they do have some onshore assets, but what they're doing is mostly offshore wind work. And this disruption was costing them millions of dollars a week. We will return to this and other offshore wind items before the show ends. Okay, next item. We have a picture of a Japanese garden. This is from ABC News. The title is Drier and Warmer Weather Boosts Interest in Low Water Landscaping. If you can see the grooves in the sand, in that picture, the sand in the lower left side of the picture, those are representative of waves on water. This is like a pond, but it's just like a pond. What the synopsis says: grass is problematic anywhere in the water supply, anywhere that the water supply is limited. Grass won't grow in dry areas without irrigation. That means in places like deserts or near desert conditions. As climate change makes the world hotter and brings on extreme weather, including drought, thirsty lawns are taxing up freshwater supplies that are already under stress. People in the western parts of the United States, where we have significant problems with water, insufficient water, are starting to turn away from lawns. They've been turning away from lawns for quite a while, but they're getting interested in other types of landscaping around their houses. And this is just one of many changes that's going on as people adapt to climate change. Okay, our next item is a graph. This article is from Clean Technica, and the title is "This One Chart Embarrasses the USA." Mike Shirtleff shared a chart from Our World in Data that deserves a shout out. It shows that Norway has nearly completed the EV transition. China's EV market is exciting and impressive. In the UK and Europe, EVs are growing strongly, although it looks like in Europe they declined in the last year. World as a percentage, I should mention that those graphs are percentages of new cars sold. World EV sales are growing, except in the United States, where the EV market is so tiny. Honestly, I think this is a bit of an oversimplification. There are countries other than the United States that have low sales. In the United States, it looks like EVs get maybe 10% of sales, where in China, the United States graph is in the lower right. In China, in the lower center, EV sales have been growing greatly in the last 4 years. United Kingdom is the lower left. European Union is the upper right, and it looks like EV sales have been basically flat in the last 3 years. And the 27 next to the word European Union in the upper right indicates the number of countries that are involved. Norway, which is part of the European Union, has hit almost 100%. Almost 100% of the new cars sold in Norway are electric, or a small amount are plug-in hybrid. And the world is at about 20%. So the world is behind the European Union and the UK, both of which are well behind China, which in turn is very far behind Norway, although it will catch up. And in the United States, we have a government that is discouraging people from buying electric vehicles. That, I think, is going to change. I did a little research on this, and I found that the price of gasoline has not gone down in Norway, despite the fact that the demand for it has gone down. And this is exactly what I had expected. My guess is that the relationship between the price of things and the demand, so that if is not exactly what what economists say. They say that if the demand for something goes down, so will the price. If the demand goes up, so will the price, assuming that the supply remains steady. But my guess is that when you get into a terminal situation where a product like gasoline, as a perfectly good example, gets to a point where the infrastructure that is needed to support the sales has a large cost relative to the sales, the price could go up because the demand is going down. So that's just something to think about. Okay, we have we are up to Friday, September 19th, and we have a picture of a supercell. This is from Euronews. The title is Earth's water system is getting volatile with deadly swings between too little and too much. And this is a warning from the World Meteorological Organization. The world's water cycle is becoming increasingly erratic, swinging between destructive floods and drought, according to a report from the World Meteorological Organization. Climate change is making water resources increasingly unpredictable. Well, that's true. I mean, it's been getting more and more obvious in the United States over the last 20, 25 years. The beginning of it that I saw was in Africa, where the changes toward drought were causing the Sahara to extend southward. There are solutions to this, and they're fairly easy to implement as long as you're willing to pay for them. They're not terribly expensive. The plan to stop the advance of the Sahara to the south is already being implemented in some countries far more than in others. But in those countries that are working on it, they're turning desert land, hard pan, in many cases, back into agricultural land that is productive, and much more productive than it had been. And that's something that can happen in the United States as well. There's no attempt to do it in the United States, but there are similar projects underway in other countries. There are, I believe, 2 projects of that type underway in India, and at least one in China. The one in China is to prevent the Gobi Desert from expanding into Inner Mongolia. Okay, we have a picture. This is an interesting picture. It didn't come with the article. I went and looked for the picture. The article was in Clean Technica. What you're seeing there in the center of the picture is the Taj Mahal. And I'd never seen it from this angle before. And of course, it's in mist, so that'll have an effect. But one of the things that interested me is that there are other magnificent monuments around the Taj Mahal. It's not standing all by itself. The title of this article is Good News from India and Australia on Emissions. Carbon Brief has published a report showing that carbon emissions in India, the world's most populous nation, yes, it is, declined ever so slightly in the first 6 months of this year. Also, this week, the government of Australia announced a national plan to cut its emissions by an amount between 62% and 70% by 2035. I didn't mention in here cut from what amount. My recollection is that it was 2005, but that's a significant cut. And we hope that can actually be established as the way they go. The big nations in terms of population, China and India, are, I think, both at peak emissions or near peak emissions, and the probability, I suspect that the probability is that they will both see emissions declines for this year, which would be, well, I'm just going to say better than nothing. It's they should have had it before if we're going to deal with climate change. I can't hold it against them though, because they've got a lot of people with no electricity and they've had to deal with that. Okay, the next item, a picture of transmission lines. This is in Western Australia, and the article is from PV Magazine Australia. The title is Western Australia transmission plan to unlock 2.6 gigawatts of renewable energy. The government of Western Australia is a huge state, by the way. It's maybe as big as the part of the United States that is east of the Mississippi River. I don't know, but it strikes me that it might be that big. But the government of Western Australia has released its Southwest Interconnected System Transmission Plan. The plan's first phase will unlock new renewable energy generation capacity, including 1 gigawatt in the north of the network and 1.6 gigawatts to the east. And Western Australia has problems with electricity because it is so big and the population is nowhere near dense. There are a few cities there, but basically, aside from that, there are towns and villages in Western Australia that, to get electricity to them after the Second World War, the government put in hundreds of miles of electric lines. Over 100 miles of electric lines just to get electric power to one village. And since that time, they've come to a point where those lines are getting old. They have to be replaced. And so they are looking at that and looking at the question of whether they're going to replace those electric lines. Now, it would sound from this article that the synopsis that I read, like they're replacing things. But the fact is, excuse me, many villages have been set up with off-grid power, so they don't need electric lines, and they don't have electric lines anymore. They might have a backup diesel generator, which hopefully doesn't get turned on, but they have wind turbines, or more probably solar panels with a big battery, and that keeps them going day and night. Okay, our next item, this is a good one. Our next item is, we're up to Sunday, September 20th. This is from Clean Technica. These are kids who are taking their part in suing over executive orders. The title is Young Environmentalists Sue Over Executive Orders That Benefit Fossil Fuels. 2 years ago, a group of young people sued the state of Montana, claiming it was failing a constitutional guarantee of a safe and clean environment. Montana has that written into the Constitution, and these kids were saying, you're not giving us that. What you're giving us is a polluted landscape. They won the case. The case went to the Montana Supreme Court, and they won in the Montana Supreme Court. There is no avenue that the people who lost that case in the government or in the fossil fuels industries or whatever, there is no avenue left for them to appeal. Now a group is suing to block the support for fossil fuels under executive orders. In some cases, these are the same children. who won in Montana. They are clearly excited, let me put it that way, about the job they're doing in, they're clearly excited about the job they're doing in protecting the environment. And they're doing it right with law. They're not into violent demonstrations or anything of that type. They're just acting within the law to have the law examine their position, and with a win, they have protected the environment in at least Montana. Now we go on to a picture of Donald Trump, and I will say, I don't know, what does he look like? He looks to me like he's not exactly happy. This image was supplied by the White House, so presumably he can have some control over what it looks like and say, I don't want to publish that. But nevertheless, it's been published from the White House. The title is Ocean Winds to Vigorously Defend South Coast Permit. Ocean Winds intends to vigorously defend its permits in court after the Trump administration indicated that it's reviewing the construction and operations plan for the 2,400 megawatt South Coast wind project off Massachusetts. South Coast Wind has planned to spend over $6 billion on the project. Now, this is basically the same thing that happened with Revolution Wind, except that it's not Revolution Wind. It's a different organization building it. Ocean Winds is a dedicated organization. It belongs to a group of companies where Revolution belongs to Ørsted. It had belonged to Ørsted and a partner, but the partner wanted to get out. Don't remember exactly, but I think the partner was Shell. But anyway, the partner wanted to get out, and Ørsted stayed in. In this case, we have different organizations. They have not taken this anywhere near as far as Revolution, but they are planning on defending their position in it. And again, the plans to prevent this development from continuing are being done for reasons that I think are. It might be that they're just revenge, or it might be that it's just hatred of wind power. I don't know, but the permits were all given. The company was acting in good faith, putting up the wind project after the permits were given. It was building harbor facilities, it was building factories, and it was preparing to have this 2.4 gigawatt wind farm installed, and all of a sudden the government comes along and says, no, you can't do that, without giving what I would consider a valid reason to prevent it from going ahead. So people are not happy, and I don't know why Donald Trump looks so unhappy in that picture, but by golly, he does. Maybe if he took a different position, he'd be happier. I don't know. Okay. Next, we have a picture of the Kumatallen wind farm, which is in Ireland, as I recall. Yes, it is. This is from Renews. SSE requests life extension at Kumatallen. This is, to my way of thinking, a really interesting article. By the way, you can see in this photograph 4 wind turbines. That's the entire wind farm. There are only 4 turbines in the wind farm. SSE applied to Cork County Council for permission to extend the operating life of the 6-megawatt Kumatalan wind farm by 20 years. The 4-turbine project has been generating since 2006, annually producing enough electricity for over 4,000 homes, while displacing about 4,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is that one of the things that is said often about wind turbines is they don't last. And I've had people argue to me that wind turbines on average fail after 6 years. And when I heard that, I thought, I should look and see what the failure rate is. How long do they last? And of course, if you want to find out how long something is likely to last, the first thing that you do is check to find out how long the warranty period is. Because if the company that manufactures it thinks that it might not last to the end of the warranty period, they're going to change the warranty or they're going to change the product. It turns out that wind turbines on the market today, and I think it was almost the same in 2006 when this was built. When this was built, most wind turbines had a 20-year warranty, so they were expected to last at least 20 years. Today, a lot of them have warranty periods of 25 years. So I don't know if the wind turbines have been improved or if experience has taught people that they last longer than they expected, but for whatever reason, the warranty period is now longer. And in this wind farm, they want to extend the life of the wind farm by 20 years. So they want it to go to 40 years. It is very interesting to me that they want to do this using the original turbines. They don't want to put in new turbines, which is something that would happen in a lot of places. They just want to continue using these turbines. Maybe if one of the turbines or more failed at some point, they would apply for permission to put in newer turbines. I don't know, but they seem to think that these turbines will continue going. So they are looking to extend their life. Okay, we're up to Sunday, September 21st, and we have, I'm trying to figure out my mice here. We have a picture of a hydrofoil electric ferry. This is an electric ferry boat, and the article is from Clean Technica. And the article looks a lot into electric ferry boats that might be used around New York City. If you think about it, New York City has a few bridges, a few tunnels, but 5 boroughs, and 2 of the boroughs are connected by land, but the rest of the boroughs, to get from one to another, you have to cross a body of water. The Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel are 2 ways to get across from New Jersey. There's bridges also from Washington Bridge. Bridges from between Brooklyn and Manhattan. A bunch of bridges between Manhattan and the Bronx. All of this creates bottlenecks, and having ferries makes the bottlenecks easier. The fact is, when I was in school, in high school, toward the end of my high school years, the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge was built between Staten Island and Brooklyn. But prior to that time, if you wanted to get from Staten Island to any other part of New York City, you had to go by boat. Anyway, the title of this is, Wouldn't You Really Rather Have an Electric Ferry? New York Climate Week 2025 has a schedule packed full of reminders why the era of fossil fuels is finally winding down. Exhibit A is an electric ferry from Dublin firm Artemis Technologies, Dublin being Dublin, Ireland, which aims to replace the diesel power travel experience with a quiet ride of an electric hydrofoil. So there you have it. I'm going to put that back up so that you can see it. As I understand it, hydrofoils, unless the water is really choppy, hydrofoils basically don't rock. They just stay pretty steady in the water. There's a sense that it's not on solid ground, but it's just a sense. Okay, we have a picture of a flood in Montpelier. This, I think, was tropical storms. It's not tropical storm. Irene, what had been Hurricane Irene. I might be wrong about that. We've had more than one flood that hit Vermont. The story comes from Clean Technica. The title is U.S. Administration Attacks Vermont Superfund Law. The folks who scream the loudest about government overreach are trying hard to force Vermont to abandon its Superfund law that establishes a duty on fossil fuel companies to pay to clean up the ungodly mess they have made of the environment in their quest for obscene profits. And I will say, I think that's respectable. That's my opinion. And in fact, for those people who think that that's a bad idea, I would ask, if your next door neighbor was throwing his trash into your backyard, would you tell him to clean it up? And if he didn't do that, would you hire somebody to clean it up and send him the bill? This all makes sense. The fossil fuels companies are wrecking our environment. As I think about this, Chesapeake Bay used to have a fishing fleet. It wasn't a fleet of boats that went out for harvesting fish that was sold in fish stores. It was a fleet that went out to take people out who wanted to fish in Chesapeake, in Lake Champlain. I'm sorry. They wanted to. Lake Champlain had a fishing fleet, and that fishing fleet was basically put out of business prior to 1925. It was more than 100 years ago. It went out of business. What put it out of business? Mercury. Mercury in the lake that was making the fish unsafe to eat. And if you had a record-breaking trout or salmon in Lake Champlain and you caught it, you should not eat it because it's poisonous, because it's got mercury in it. And that is based on information from the state. They stopped the fishing fleet. And more than 100 years ago, as I understand it, that mercury was not in Lake Champlain 100 years before that. That mercury got into Lake Champlain because coal was being burned, and tiny amounts of mercury in the coal was being volatilized and, wafting through the air from places like New York, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and landing enough of it in Lake Champlain that it raised the amount of mercury in the water to the point that it was not safe to eat fish from it. And that's true of other waterways too, but rivers don't collect it the way a lake does, and so forth. This issue of the Superfund law by the way, is supported by what is called attribution science, which is a way of looking at a problem and saying, we know how to figure out how much of the blame for this belongs to whom. So attribution science can say, we know that there was a flood in Houston. How much of that flood came from climate change? And there are answers to that. And the answers show that climate change created part of the flooding of Hurricane Harvey in Houston. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead. Solar power. We have a picture of solar power. This is from MSN. Fact checkers debunk the most prominent claims about the reliability of solar power. By the way, MSN has a lot of articles. They really don't have a policy, as far as I can tell, about what kinds of articles they put up. They just put up articles that they think people will read. So you can see two articles right next to each other that disagree with each other altogether. But this is about fact-checking the prominent claims about reliability of solar power. Several misleading claims about solar power are circulating that could deter homeowners from upgrading. Fact-checkers at Carbon Brief, name of a organization that looks into issues relating to carbon emissions, debunked some of the most common myths. Spoiler, even without incentives, solar power is a great way to save money. Okay, the myths they're talking about: solar is unreliable, solar is more expensive, produces large amounts of carbon dioxide over its lifetime, including building the panels and so forth, is a threat to agriculture and security, will produce large amounts of waste when the panels are at the end of their life, and is inefficient in heat waves. Also, batteries have huge fire risk. All of these are looked at. All of them are basically said, no, that is not true. What is true is that solar is reliable. It is less expensive. In fact, it's the cheapest source of energy we've got. It produces a tiny amount of carbon dioxide as it's being built. It's not a threat to agriculture or security. In fact, it enhances both, remarkably enhances both. Will produce very little waste, and there are companies that are establishing themselves on recycling the panels, and it is far more efficient in heat waves than some other kinds of energy. The example that comes to my mind is nuclear. When they have heat waves, nuclear plants can be forced to shut down because they can't cool themselves properly. The other side of that token is nuclear plants have been shut down by cold weather, and specifically when they had that cold weather in Texas years ago, a couple of years ago. Texas has 3 nuclear plants, and one of them was shut down. Also, batteries have a huge fire risk. Batteries have a fire risk. They do burn. In fact, I read today installation that had caught fire. 2 big batteries. But compared to gasoline, the risk is very, very low. And 1 gallon of gasoline, I tried to do research to find out. I had a figure that was in my mind of 1 gallon of gasoline vaporized into air in the correct amount to produce explosive power. 1 gallon of gasoline has the explosive power of 18 sticks of dynamite. Well, I couldn't find that. I did find 20 sticks of dynamite. I found 80 sticks of dynamite, but I didn't find 18, and the range was between 20 and 80. And people put this stuff in their garage, in a car, with the garage doors closed. I don't think gasoline is safe, but you know, that's what we're used to. Okay, we're up to Monday, September 22nd, and we have a picture of a nuclear power plant. See it? Well, if you look about halfway, look at the middle of the picture, and just to the left of that, over a fair extension, and you can see steam rising from cooling towers. There's a power plant there. This article is from PV Magazine International, and the title is Record Nuclear Power Output in 2024 Irrelevant to Global Energy Landscape. Nuclear plants set a record for generating in 2024, but industry optimism is not backed by economic data or investment. And who says this? The World Nuclear Industry Status Report 2025. This is not an anti-nuclear organization that made this report. Nuclear power generated 9% of global electricity, its lowest value in 4 decades. So nuclear plant power is on the rise, everybody tells us. Yeah, maybe it is rising, but as a percentage of the total electric output, it's declining. And it's being overrun by solar with batteries and wind with batteries. I'm going to go on. Okay, we have a picture here of rooftop solar power. This is from PV Magazine Australia. The title is Renewables Share Reach Record of 77.9% share in NEM. The NEM I'll get to in a second what that is. Data from the energy advisory company Global Power Energy shows the share of renewables in Australia's NEM, National Electricity Market, energy mix reached a record 77.9% at 11:20 a.m. on Sunday, 21st of September. The record eclipses the previous high of 76.8%, which was set the previous day. Now, what they're saying here is that 77.9% of the national electricity market, electricity, was being delivered from renewable energy. 77.9. The rest, now they don't have nuclear power in Australia. The rest was coming from coal and natural gas primarily, but also from hydropower. Australia is big, but it doesn't have a lot of water. The national electricity market, I should discuss just for a second. Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, to an extent South Australia. These are eastern states, and they have a grid that connects them. They have a large population compared to Western Australia, which has kind of grids that are not attached to each other. And they have growing amounts of off-grid power in Western Australia. So, but the majority, the biggest grid in Australia is the NEM, the National Electricity Market. Okay, we are up to, oh, we're still on Monday. I had fun finding this photograph. This article is from Clean Technica. The title is $100,000 Mistake, Why H-1B Barriers and Policy Roadblocks Shrink America's Future. The H-1B visa program has been a conduit for global talent into the American economy. It has been a central driver of U.S. leadership in high technology. But Trump wants to charge $100,000 for that visa. So the talent, which is behind America's high-tech systems, a lot of the talent is going to China, the EU, and other places. He calls it, the author of this calls it a $100,000 mistake. The reason I like that picture, by the way, I went looking for a picture of an engineer at work. I found one, this red-headed woman. And I thought, wow, her hair is almost exactly the color that mine was when I was a 20-year-old. Mine was a little bit blonder than that. Her hair is a little bit browner than mine. But, you know, can't have everything. And we're up to Tuesday, September 23rd. People paid attention to me for no good reason when I was that age. And we have an article from Renews and a picture of offshore wind turbines. We're back to Ørsted and Revolution Wind. The title is Ørsted Shares Surge After U.S. Court Win. That didn't take very long. Ørsted's share price surged after a federal judge, and by the way, it didn't surge to higher than it was before Trump told it to stop working. It surged not quite back to where it was at the time. It surged after a federal judge granted the developer's request for an injunction against a Trump administration stop work order, allowing work to resume on the 704 megawatt Revolution Wind project. It had been ordered stopped by the Trump administration on the 22nd of August. So, there is that. I'm going to go on. We have a picture of a rooftop solar system and an article from Clean Technica. This is called 10 Responses to Common Electric Car and Renewable Energy Myths. There are a number of popular and media myths regarding clean tech that just aren't true or lack context, yet are pushed year after year after year after year. Here are some quick responses to 10 of them, starting with the probability of a battery fire versus a gas fire. And what we have here is gasoline-powered cars are actually far more likely to catch fire than electric cars. Myth: electric cars are a major fire risk. The list goes on. There's a myth that EV batteries have to be charged every few years at a cost of thousands of dollars. That isn't true. They last typically for 15 years or at least 10, over 10 years. They're not like the 12-volt batteries that cars have. A myth: electric cars are all super expensive. Not true. Myth: electric cars are less convenient than gasoline-powered cars. Actually, the opposite is true for most people, because you can drive the car home, plug it in. When you go to work the next day, it's ready to go. You don't have to go to a gas station. Myth: solar and wind power are expensive. Absolutely the opposite of what is true. They are the least expensive forms of electricity that we've got, of generating power. Myth: solar power and other renewable sources are just as dirty as coal power plants, natural gas plants, and conventional gas-powered cars. I don't know where people can be getting that from. It's just not true. Myth: solar and power and wind power are a threat to farmland. The exact opposite is true. Farmers can keep their farms because of the extra income they get from solar and wind power. And in fact, solar power actually, when it's installed over cropland and crops are grown there, they very often produce better under the solar panels. And by the way, it's true that some solar panels have things in them that you don't want in your crop, but most don't, or the majority of them don't. You just be careful to put in panels that don't have that problem. Myth: we can't add more solar and wind power because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. absolutely not true. We have batteries now, and batteries do better backup than load following plants do for baseload power. Myth, we could build a new nuclear plant rather than more solar and wind power. Yeah, if you're willing to wait 10 years and pay twice as much, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. And myth, clean technologies are not helpful economically. It's just not true. But when you have things that people have, where people want to when people have a way to avoid paying for fossil fuels, the fossil fuels industry will produce all kinds of mythology. They're really good at it. Okay, we have an item from Renews and a picture of a wind farm, and the title is Clean Energy Jobs Growing Faster Than U.S. Economy. Clean energy jobs grew more than 3 times as fast as the rest of the U.S. economy last year, according to a report out from the nonpartisan business group E2. The clean energy sector added almost 100,000 new jobs, bringing the total number of clean energy workers in the United States to 3.56 million. We're up to Wednesday, September 24th. We have a picture here of an ENBW substation. The name of the wind farm is on the substation, but I can't read it. This is from Renews. NextGeo seals 8-year survey deal with 50 Hertz. 50 Hertz is the name of the utility that serves the part of Germany that used to be East Germany. NextGeo Solutions signed an 8-year framework agreement with 50 Hertz for geotechnical seabed survey services for offshore substations in the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. The deal will see NextGeo as a primary provider of survey support to the German transmission system operator. In order to put these things in, you can't just take something out to sea and say, well, I think it should be here, and stick it down. You have to take a good look at the sea floor to make sure that you don't have one of the legs standing on top of a boulder that the other legs don't touch or something. You have to do protection against what is called scouring in many places. There's a lot of work you have to do on the bottom of the ocean. And that is what you do. Okay, the next picture is a picture of a battery system. And this article is from Renews. The title is Ofgem advances 77 projects in battery scheme. Ofgem has confirmed that 77 long-duration electricity storage projects will proceed to final assessment stage in its new cap and floor support scheme. The program was designed to unlock a multi-billion-pound investment in technologies that can store surplus renewable power for later use. Obviously, this is in the UK. I don't think there are any other countries that use pound anymore. The Australians did, and they did in New Zealand, but I think they've switched to dollars. But in fact, Australia and New Zealand have. But Ofgem is pushing battery systems in the UK in order to get the entire UK advanced through renewable energy systems so they can move ahead. And I think our next item is the last in this show. If you read this article, you could take a look at this picture and the one that accompanies the article, which was produced by ChatGPT. This one is a photograph. And I would bet you that ChatGPT used this photograph and modified it in order to come up with its its picture that it had been asked to create. And I really wonder whether that doesn't violate some kind of copyright, even though this is a free photograph, because you have to indicate where it came from, and ChatGPT didn't do that. Anyway, this article is from Clean Technica. The picture is the Golden Gate Bridge. The title is California Energy Commission's $55 million EV fast charging program. The California Energy Commission announced that $55 million in funding to expand the Golden State's public EV fast charging system infrastructure. California is the leading EV and EV charging state by far. The state plans to ban the sale of new gasoline-powered vehicles by 2035. And you can bet there's a lot of opposition to that. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2035, because at that point, we may have come to a point where it's just not possible to operate gasoline-powered vehicles anymore. I don't know. If that happens, then people will be saying that California was way ahead of history, and it had a visionary approach to the future and so forth. But right now, especially in the fossil fuels industry and in some parts of the car industry and in some parts of the federal government, there is a great deal of opposition to this. Nevertheless, they're putting in fast charging systems. Now we come to the very end, and what I'm suggesting to everybody is you have a uniquely exhilarating week. And I will wave goodbye and tell you that I hope you come back next time. It is always a pleasure to make this program. I hope it's a pleasure for you to see it. Next week, I believe Nancy will be back. She had other things that she had to do, and that happens. So have a good week until then. Have a uniquely exhilarating week. Bye.